Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrāja Kacāra Satara Sata Shri Śrimad. His Divine Grace of Bhāgavatam Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. Skan Founder Acharya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki. BBT Founder Acharya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jaya Nityalibha Vishnu Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrāja Kacāra Satara Sata Shri Śrimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Gaudiya Vaishnava Vrinda Ki. Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam Ki. Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the Assembled Devotees. All glories to the Assembled Devotees. All glories to the Assembled Devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita, Volume 6, chapter titled, I Have Done My Part. It is a Rakshasa civilization, said Prabhupada, and he began mimicking the cry of a typical street vendor, do rupiah, and no knowledge, no knowledge. After touring the Gurukula facility, Prabhupada had the devotees place his chair down once more before returning to his own rooms. With most of the resident devotees of the Krishna Balaram Mandir, including Gurukula students, gathered around him, Prabhupada made his emphatic point. You are thinking of management, he said. This manager and that manager, and what rooms to utilize. But my question is, who will you manage? Bring that person. In Bengali, there is a superstition that you should not lie with your head toward the northern side. So one man said, but I have no head. For me, what is the question of keeping it to the northern or the southern side? So your contemplation about management is like that. First of all, who will you manage? Simply considering office manager and this and that is not good. First thing is bring students, then it will be successful. That afternoon, Srila Prabhupada said he would speak to the Gurukul staff. They gathered in his room and he instructed them as only he could. He who was empowered to lead the world organization of Lord Chaitanya's movement. Our next business, he began, is to approach the well-to-do businessmen and tell them, children of your family are expected to be educated with good behavior good character and devotion. Chanakya Pandit says, what is the use of begetting children like cats and dogs? They must be learned and follow the bhakti marg. We will teach your sons these things. Canvas like that. In the present society, he said, even the prime minister's son may be a debauchee. The demon Hiranyakashipu hadn't wanted his son Prahlad to be a devotee, but to be like himself, a cheater and a diplomat. And today's society was comprised of little Hiranyakashipus. But our idea is to create Prahlads. Srila Prabhupada continued, at least 250 students can be accommodated nicely. Throughout India and the whole world, you cannot bring 250 students? What kind of managers are you? I say bring 500, canvas like this. I fall down at your lotus feet. I flatter you 100 times. Kindly hear me. In this white canvas, you have to bring students, not just rooms for management. Prabhupada said that if the Gurukula was successful, and if ISKCON got more standing in the future, the government could take guidance from ISKCON and not allow people to cheat, claiming to be a Brahmin or Kshatriya without the training. These things are now a dream, Prabhupada admitted, but it should be done. I'm thinking of so many things, but my life is ending. So keep these ideas, you especially, because you are young men. Srila Prabhupada ki. And this emphasis on rooms in the beginning of that conversation. Prabhupada, the devotees there, after building the new Gurukul building, had started to, like at Bagh Bazaar, had started to select rooms for management. This would be this temple, temple president room, this manager's room, like that. So Prabhupada was a little concerned that they weren't thinking properly. Somebody left out the place mark. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 20, Text 27, chapter titled Conversation Between Maitreya and Vidura. Tvameka kila lokanam Tvameka kila lokanam Klishtanam kleshanasanaha Klishtanam kleshanasanaha Tvameka kleshadastesham Tvameka kleshadastesham Anasana padang tava Anasana padang tava. Please chant. Tvam eka kila lokanam Krishtanam kleshanasanaha Tvam eka kleshadastesham Tvameka kila lokanam Klishtanam kleshanasanaha Tvameka kleshadastesham Anasana padang tava Tvameka kila lokanam Klishtanam kleshanasanaha Tvameka kleshadastesham Anasana padang tava. Ladies. Tvameka kilalokanam klishtanam kleshanasana Tvameka kleshadatesham anashana padang tava Tvameka kilalokanam klishtanam kleshanasana Tvameka kleshadatesham anasana padang tava Tvameka kilalokanam klishtanam kleshanasana Tvameka kleshadatesham anasana padang tava. Anyone else? Tvam, you, ekaha, alone, kila, indeed, lokanam, of the people, klishtanam, afflicted with miseries, klesha, the distresses, nashanaha, relieving, tvameka, you alone, kleshadaha, inflicting distress, tesham, on those, anasana, not taken shelter, padam, feet, tava, your, Shishi Radha Gundadev Ki. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. My Lord, you are the only one capable of ending the affliction of the distress and inflicting agony on those who never resort to your feet. Please repeat. My Lord, you are the only one capable of ending the affliction of the distressed and inflicting agony on those who never resort to your feet. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The words kleshadas tesham manasana padangtava indicate that the Lord has two concerns. The first is to give protection to persons who take shelter of His lotus feet, and the second is to give trouble to those who are always demoniac and who are inimical toward the Lord. Maya's function is to give afflictions to the non-devotees. Here Brahma said, you are the protector of the surrendered souls. Therefore I surrender unto your lotus feet. Please give me protection from these demons. This Pratranaya sadhanam vinashaya chadushkatam. So this reassurance or protection for the devotees is always very edifying. And sometimes, even in devotional service, we tend to think that we're all alone fighting these battles, internal, external. But this forgetfulness at any particular time can be seen as an opportunity that what prompts this seeming, we're in the middle of a temple, in the middle of the Hare Krishna society. Why would one, for whatever reason, think that he's not sheltered in the correct situation? In the military all over the world, they have bases. In the past, they were called forts. In India, they're very, very prominent forts, very stout, sturdy, situated on the top of mountains. Like if you go to Jaipur, you see the old city, Jaipur, from a distance. If you go to the back of the city palace and look beyond the reflecting pond, you see huge fort. Of course, it became too small. It was not just a fort, it was also the palace. And there were so many arrangements there for the protection of the fort. And so we have similar arrangements for our own protection. We have our, Sango Pangascha Parshadam. We have weapons, that are given to us by Lord Chaitanya. They're not the steel and metal weapons, but they're the weapons of this association of devotees together with the holy name. So these are the essential items for the Krishna conscious movement, not rooms like Prabhupada, or buildings for that matter. And Prabhupada was always emphasizing, even when we had nice facility, he was thinking that this Gurukul building is very nicely built, brand new, everything was shining, a bathroom in every corner, on both floors. You couldn't ask for a better facility at that time. But his emphasis was on bringing students to Krishna consciousness, not on creating facility for managers to sit in an office and just act like babus. In India, the clerks are called babus. And they just sit there and just push paper, push pencils. It's counterproductive, especially in the Krishna consciousness society, to become mired in management. Prabhupada famously said that if you chant your rounds, 16, if you chant your rounds, management will be at your fingertips. So this is our emphasis. It's not that we're concentrating all day long how to be expert managers. Even the businessmen in the outside world, they're those who have developed different styles of management. The most prominent is that you manage things and you lead people. Okay? So this is also our emphasis. Prabhupada was trying to fill the temple. Because when the temple is full, automatically everything is done. There's no shortage. When there's a shortage, we have to schedule everything and we have to think of who's doing this service and who's doing that service, like that. It becomes a little burdensome. Prabhupada alluded to that in Vrindavan again, that when there's for whatever reason, an absence of Krishna consciousness, things become difficult. Because you're trying to force the situation. It's not flowing naturally. The resources seem to be just like the Damodar Leela. You're trying to arrange everything. Mother Yashoda is gathering rope, goes to tie Krishna, and it's 2 fingers short. And so this way, it's always 2 fingers short. Unless Krishna allows us to be his representatives. It is not that I can make myself a representative. We're not elected. But if Krishna allows us to serve in a certain capacity, then we should take shelter of the service, not the position. It's not that I'm GBC or I'm guru or I'm this or I'm not. No, I'm simply das, anudas. That's our position. And so we should take shelter of that position and the attitude that comes with it and try to humbly engage ourselves, and then automatically things will get done. Prabhupada would always lead by example, not just lead, teach, everything. Acharya, the definition means one who teaches by example, one who leads by example. So this is what we should all attempt, at least personally, to try to live our lives in such a way that it not to artificially prompt some following, but just to do the right thing. Because if that's the case, then automatically there'll be those who see, okay, this devotee, he's trying his best. Let me assist. In one sense, this is all we are in that way. Just like Ram Roy Prabhu, he's going out every single day, and those who see the value of that service, they want to go as well. Right? It's not by force. Nothing can be by force. It's counterproductive. Just like you can't force a child to do something. You have to give them something better to do. You can try to force, but there'll be some resentment. What's the point at that? Everything has to be voluntary. We're here for love. We're here for love for Krishna. We're here for love for the spiritual master. Ultimately we're here for the love of the association altogether. Otherwise, there's what's the point? Everyone should feel secure emotionally, physically, spiritually. It's all one aspect in Krishna consciousness. It's not a separate thing. It's not that I try to be secure in one aspect and neglect others, either by my own efforts or by trying to help others. So we see that, of course, we know internally that Krishna is our protector. We take shelter in that way. One should always feel that Krishna will protect me. Otherwise, how we can cry out at the time of death? We're chanting Hare Krishna so that when that moment comes, that Krishna's name will very loudly resound, from the heart. Prabhupada gave that example, that full surrender, sarvatmana, means no reservation with all your heart. No reservation, nothing held back. And of course, at the time of death, what else do you have? There's nothing. It doesn't matter if you're the richest person in the world, if you have the most beautiful spouse, the most loving children, the biggest business in the world. At that moment, the only thing that matters is, can you chant Hare Krishna? Has your life been construed in such a way? Have you engaged yourself in such a way that you feel deeply that I am Krishna's servant? And of course, if that's so, then at the time of death, you will cry out loudly, "Oh Krishna, please save me." Or just Krishna. Right? We've seen that. And devotees in difficult situations, they cry out, "Krishna, Krishna." And we've said before, it happens, and it can happen anytime, to anyone, anywhere. But of course, it's very symbolic, because not everyone gets to be there at someone else's time of death. But they have that cockpit voice recorder, commonly referred to as the black box. Whenever there's an airplane crash, they always look for it. It's actually not black, it's orange, so it can be easily found. But it's called a black box. And it plays, it's a 30-second loop recording. So it's always the last 30 seconds. So that last 30 seconds, the most common refrain from the pilots as they're going down is cursing, just abject cursing. Why? Because they don't know what else to do. They've not been trained. They're experts in their field, years and years to fly this plane. If you've ever seen the cockpit of a jet engine, it's a myriad of dials and switches. What do you do? No one would know, gauges. If one of us sat there. But if we were in the passenger seat in the back and it happened for whatever reason, like it happened to George Harrison, they thought they were going to die. The turbulence was so strong, the overhead compartments were flying open. Everything was shaking. The whole plane was in terror. And George Harrison was chanting Hare Krishna as loud as he could. As loud as he could. And when he was doing it, other people were joining with him. Right? But these poor pilots, they're just cursing and cursing. And that's what's on this last 30 seconds. So it's very unfortunate. Whole life, and in a moment, wasted. Human form of life wasted. Puna mushtaka bhav. Again, become whatever. Mouse, germ, cockroach. So we should take full advantage of the situation with all this knowledge of who we are, who is God, and what is our relationship. The essence is to, live by that realization. Right? You have to walk the walk. Right? It's not just to talk the talk. It's not that if we dress, in a certain way to impress devotees, or we wear our chadar in a certain way, or we wear our pugri. In India, it's called the pugri. You wrap your turban. You make it, in Brijbasis have a particular way. When they wrap their turban, they pull a little piece off to the side. It's like a signature. If you're not a Brijbasi, you can't do that. And for us, we shouldn't be imitating anyone other than Srila Prabhupada. All right? And following, because, there's those two things, anusara, anukara, imitation and following. Obviously, following is better than imitation, but imitation of a pure devotee, if done correctly, following, we can do. We want to imitate how Srila Prabhupada did certain things and acted in certain situations. And that, for us, that's acceptable. But not to imitate others, for some purpose of self-aggrandizement, to try to puff ourselves up. That's thinking that I'll get the same level of respect as that person because he does it like that. We should be original in our service to Prabhupada. Everyone is individual. He serves with his heart, but it's unique. How you apply yourself in whatever service you have. We like to use the example of washing pots because it's a common theme in ISKCON, that you start off in the pot room and you learn how to apply yourself, to making something spotlessly clean, with the idea that Prabhupada said, when you clean Krishna's pots, you clean your heart. So it's a very direct connection, this pratyaksha bhagamam dharma, this practically realized. You practically realize that just by engaging in this service, I'm being purified. You feel it. Your false ego is melting away. Because normally this is not being a pot washer in the material world is, you could say, the bottom of everything in the employment world. He's a pot washer. Okay, that's it. You don't usually include that on your resume and future job applications. If someone's looking for a skill set, you have those things that are called KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities. So you have to demonstrate your knowledge, skills, and abilities. So if your only KSA is, I can wash the pots spotlessly clean, maybe someone will take note and see, okay, the person knows how to apply himself, but typically not. But in Krishna consciousness, if the temple commander comes by and he sees this person busting suds, chanting Hare Krishna and getting the job done, he sees that this person is applying himself with all of his heart. So that's a great situation for both parties to see that. When you see someone engaging in devotional service to that extent, where he's fully engaged, you know he's meditating 100% on doing that service as to the best of his ability, then you appreciate that. We should all appreciate that. You know? On the other hand, if you see a person kind of like trying to skate, I don't know if that colloquial term is still current in the vernacular, but skate means to get away from something. You know, it's like when you're roller skating. They say he's skating his engagement. It means he's not doing it. He's trying to minimize it, or he's trying to get out of it. So we don't want to be known as a person who just tried to do the bare minimum. You know, the service gets done, but it's to the bare minimum. You know, you want to get every spot on the floor if you're mopping or sweeping or vacuuming. You don't want to leave any dust. That's an indication that your heart is not in the service. You know, your heart is not in it. Yeah, this is not something unique to Krishna consciousness. They say a job worth doing is a job worth doing right. Right? That's like, you've heard your father say it 1,000,000 times. At least I did. You know, this is what they say. It's one of their favorite aphorisms, and that's okay, because it's a truism. It is. Any job worth doing is worth doing right. Otherwise, what's the point? You know, so we have the greatest opportunity here to engage ourselves in such a way that, what did Prabhupada say? That Krishna sees you. You know, this is, in Mayapur, when he said, everybody realized, yes. Of course, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was saying that to his disciples, of whom Srila Prabhupada obviously was prominent. He said, don't try to see Krishna. Just act in such a way that Krishna sees you. So if you're thinking like that, then of course you're going to do the best possible service, whatever you can do. Because I want to be seen by Krishna. That's not a selfish thing. That's not something that should be minimized. It should be emphasized. Yes, work in such a way that Krishna sees you. Don't try to work in such a way just to satisfy the temple commander or the temple president or whoever. You know? Besides that, what do we know about witnesses? How many witnesses are there looking at our activities? Did you get to that part in the Gita yet, in the purport? 33 million demigods. And then besides that, there's the moon, the sun. These are Krishna's eyes, according to the Bhagavad Gita. So we have so many witnesses. You're not escaping anything. It's not that what you do is not seen. It is seen. And of course, the super soul is in your heart. So he's the primary witness. Right? He sees, knows everything, every single thought. You know? And why do we pray to Krishna? To purify our mind, because we, obviously, being in the material world for as long as we have, not just in this birth and millions of births, we're filled with contaminated, mental images. We want to pray to Krishna, please relieve me from this burden of previous material activities and mental speculation, right? Mat karma krin, mat paramo, mat bhakta sangavajata. So all in all, we're daily doing our activities. They're not just ritualistic, routine, mechanical. No, they're meant to evoke our internal mood of surrender to the Supreme Lord through prayer. Everything we do is a prayer. From the Maha Mantra to the Guru Vasakam to the Guru, the Guru Vandana, everything for now it may be just routine and rote. We just say the words. But we have to at some point, internalize these words. so that that it becomes part of who we are. That we can say it with genuine sincerity, not just the routine, But this is the training. So this temple, just like Prabhupada said in that, who did he say that to? Tashira Dakshai. No, was it Tashira Dakshai Vishnu? My godbrother, originally from London. He was, and then he had an ashram. Very sweet devotee. Yeah, Tashira Dakshai Vishnu. You remember Shira Dakshai? He passed away. He went back to Prabhupada. 29 January, 1973. These temples, they are just like oases in the desert for the conditioned souls to quench the thirst of their desire for real happiness. So that's what these temples are. An oasis in the desert. Of all the places in New York, the only place for shelter is Krishna's temple. You can have, how many Starbucks are there in New York City? 50, 100, 300? But they're not a shelter for anything, right? Or Trader Joe's, or Whole Foods. So many stores everywhere, all over. People are rushing to these stores. But there's no shelter there. They satisfy their material desires only. But in Krishna's temple, everything is satisfied simultaneously. It's a one-stop shop. And we have to advertise that. Like the Sunday feast today, we're advertising, come to Krishna's temple. A feast for the senses, a feast for the eyes. It's a feast for the soul. People will realize it if they come in and they can immediately, what do they smell? They smell the incense offered to the Lord. Right? This is very special. Their senses are being purified. They don't even know it. But their senses are being purified. And that is allowing them to appreciate. And that appreciation, that favorable appreciation, prompts a favorable mood and mentality that allows them to hear. It allows them to hear. So when we approach them, they're favorable. It's not like out on the street where you have to kind of you have to have your routine down. You got to be able to stop them. Gopal's got his lines, knows. Because they're not really, it's not the oasis. You're out on the battlefield. And you try to render critical care. But the patient doesn't even know he needs it. You're trying to stop him. So it's a little bit, it takes more effort, right? But when they come into the temple, they're already, in one sense, ready. They've made it that far to come into the doors. And so, yes, when we approach them, and they say, oh, Hare Krishna, your first time here? How did you come? Oh, you received a card from the devotees chanting at Times Square? Oh, how nice. So you give them some simple conversation. What do you know about yoga? So we're here. It's like that story that Toshan Krishnapur tells, that when he asked Prabhupada if he should continue his medical education, and Prabhupada said, no, we have enough doctors. He says, we need doctors of the soul. We need doctors of the soul. That's we're trying to cure the material disease, the bhava roga. And this takes much more expertise than being a so-called doctor, a mechanic of the body. This is the essential need at this time, which is why Srila Prabhupada came. So just as the Supreme Lord is coming, Pratyanaya Sadhanam Vinashaya Chidishkritam, He's coming, he's giving trouble. How is he giving trouble to the demons? I mean, what do we see? There's wars, there's pestilence, there's famine. There's even an abbreviation for it called PAN-FA war. Pandemic, famine, and war. These things all come together, you know, and that's ushers in, you know, what they commonly accept to be the apocalypse at some point. You know, so that's Krishna, he's troubling them. We don't have to do anything. It's not that he's individually pointing out, and of course, in one sense, it may appear that way. They have a new term now, suddenly died. Has everyone heard that term? You haven't heard that term? Young people, people with no previous health conditions. There's insurance companies do certain analyses of data. And year over year, the deaths amongst the group of persons from 18 to 54 is up 5,000%. It's just a statistic. The insurance people work on statistics. This is how the actuators know how to structure the costs, you know. And the term that's most common now is suddenly died. He died, suddenly died, she suddenly died. He was only 25, he was only 25. He was a fit athlete, you know, famous soccer player, famous playing. He died suddenly. But this is nothing new. Everyone dies suddenly. No one dies, you know, by design, unless it's an atomic bomb or something like that. Death comes when it comes. If you're fortunate to get some warning and you can act on it, that's a blessing. You know, like Parikshit Maharaj, like the whole Śrimad Bhāgavatam is here for us from that one instance. So everything is connected. You know, it's not that, you know, yes, Shringi was a Brahmin boy, and when he put that snake around Parikshit Maharaj's neck, little did anyone know. You know, I mean, if you just examined it from that particular angle, that from that would come to Śrimad Bhāgavatam. You know, this whole. So so where also we have this opportunity that we know that death is coming. Death is inevitable. For one who has taken birth, death is certain. Right? This is not something that we have to speculate on or even argue about. If you ask any person in the material world, do you expect to die someday? Of course, he'll say yes. So, what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? You know, some people who are a little elevated say, oh, I'm trying to be a good person. You know, because they know, you know, whether they acknowledge it or not, you know, it's common now for people to voice that what goes around comes around. You know, it's become internalized. They know it. But many, of course, don't consider that. And this is like it's like Charvak Muni was their guru, or is their guru. You know, beg, borrow, or steal, you know, but get ghee. You know, so they're just beg, borrow, steal anything that's available. It's no question of ghee. You know, designer clothes flying off the racks. You know, people going into stores and walking out with, you know, whatever they can carry. You know, because there's no consequences. Of course, there are consequences, but they don't know it. And so it would be nice to educate a person, but if they're not ready, you really can't tell them. You have to be ready for the education. You have to be ready to hear it and to accept that, yes, what you're doing is not correct. You know, whether hiracho or kiracho, whether you're stealing a cucumber or a diamond, you know, that mood, that mentality is not conducive for spiritual life. It will simply increase You know, you ask a thief, how did he begin? He didn't begin by robbing the Bank of England. He began by stealing in the street, little things here and there, and then gradually elevating himself up to the big times. You know, when they're scheming to do some major robbery. You know, and of course they make movies about this all the time. You know, very sophisticated, and people say, "Oh, this is very good." What's good about stealing? But there's some allure, to this romanticized version of stealing, and because everything is relative in the material world, even morality. They even have a word for it, right? Yeah. So we don't have any understanding, or how can you say, not understanding, any consideration with regard to moral relativity. You know, for us, we understand that the 4 pillars of sinful life can't be eradicated by simply thinking about it, any more than you could cut down a tree by thinking about it. You have to have the tools to do the job. And for us, of course, the tools is the holy name. You know, your association, Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, the holy name alone, you know, renders all benediction. So we have to have that faith. And in this way, we will succeed. Those, Prabhupada was, I forget who he was preaching to, but he was basically saying that these boys and girls have become free from drugs simply by this chanting. The government was spending millions of dollars with no success. He even went, at that time, the mayor of New York City was a person named John Lindsay. And Prabhupada approached him, he wrote a letter, and explained to him that and this was a big, imagine Prabhupada saying this, you give these drug addicts to me, or you allow me to give you a method to engage them, you know, meditation. If nobody, now it's pretty commonly accepted that this is one of the paths to reformation. And I'll transform them. I'll make them devotees. That was a big challenge. Prabhupada was saying, yeah, I'll do your rehabilitation program. For New York City, Prabhupada didn't think small. You know, writing to the mayor. So we have this, you know, just like Prabhupada is also saying here in Lilamrita, bring 500 students, not just 250. Think big. He's telling them, you know, don't think small. You're thinking small only about getting an office. Go out and preach, fall at their feet, flatter them. Give me your sons. So we have to be bold like this. We can't be timid. This is not the time to be timid. You know, Kali Yuga is approaching, it's here, it's everywhere. And we want to save people from going to Kumbhipaka, from these hellish planets. It's very, I think it was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta that had the dioramas. I can't remember which one, the dioramas of the hellish planets, you know, some aspect of it. You know, you wouldn't want to go there. It's not a, you know, the generic version of hell, you know, is sort of like fire and brimstone, you know, it's hot, whatever. But it's not, it doesn't, the common understanding of hell doesn't compare. It's almost like just being in Florida in the summer, they make it seem like it's hot. It's hot. No. Hell is something where the suffering is inconceivable. When you read Fifth Canto the first time and you think, oh my goodness, what is this? The Vaitarana, this river filled with, all unmentionable things. It's just, it's a wake-up call. But people are not, they've how can you say, compartmentalized it, that they don't even think about it, the consequences of their activities, on what it can result in. And so that is a part of impersonalism, and voidism, to be able to say that there's nothing, this life is all in all, and at death, that's it. So I don't have to worry, I can do whatever I want. When I die, I die. So yes, we have a big job, and Sunday's our day to really make an effort to, it's not, it's not uncommon, and it's not that we make devotees, it's not like you can have a recipe, 2 cups of, bhakti and, another cup of Shrikant or something like that, and boom, there's your devotee. No, it's not that. But the Sunday feast, when they come and they engage all their senses and they have the good conversation and they recognize that this association is different from any other association, and that this is something that's actually pleasing to my soul, that you're on your way to, quote unquote, making a devotee. You're transforming that hard-hearted soul who had no other refuge and, somehow or other ended up here after, receiving that card or that cookie or whatever it was. And we need 500 devotees. Prabhupada said it. We shouldn't think small. This temple is also a Gurukula, right? It's an educational institution. Every day there's Śrimad Bhāgavatam class. And there are classes all on. There's a school of bhakti. There's everywhere, all the time, there's an opportunity to learn or to teach, depending on your situation. So we're we should utilize this facility to the maximum potential possible. Right? Then we'll be pleasing Prabhupada. We have this huge building. Anybody know how many square feet this building is? 32,500 square feet. That's just this building. And next door is another 15,000 square feet. Okay, that's a lot of square feet. For the businessman, he's just thinking, oh, so much money, because they calculate in square footage, how much you could rent it for, how much you could sell it for, right? But for us, our calculation is how many devotees can we fit in this building? When we built the building, when we renovated the building, we didn't build it, we bought it, but we renovated the building. There was no rooms upstairs. There were just 3 halls that they used to hold meetings in. All right? And so we converted it into a living space. And we put in, as you can see, on each floor there's 6 toilets, 6 showers, 6 sinks. So, what is that total then for the men and the ladies? You have a combined water capacity. So you have to be able to facilitate that. So we had to engineer that there would always be sufficient hot water, even if everyone was taking a shower simultaneously, and they were washing the pots in the kitchen, and they were running the washing machines, that there would still be hot water in the tap. So the plumber made that calculation. That's why downstairs we had 8 boilers 8 tankless boilers that would come on one after another, cascading. All right? So it's a whole calculation. They have things like aquastats. It tells the temperature in the water that's in the return line. If it falls below a certain temperature, it kicks on another boiler, and then another and another. So that even the last person would get a hot shower if necessary. Because we know that the brahmacharis like to take cold showers, so we're saving all that hot water for the ladies' floor. But that was the case. That's how this building was built. It was built so technically you could have literally 100 people simultaneously using the water. So we're nowhere near that capacity now. People think we're crowded. Oh, there's 2 of us in the room now. No, we had minimum of 6 to a room. 3 sets of bunk beds in each room. Like a submarine. This is our happy yellow submarine here, you know. Yeah, it's not that, well, this is my floor space. You can't, nobody should come here. And we could do it on the floor, but you can have at least 6, 7, 8 people. Right? Would that be horrible? Someone's thinking, no, we can't have too many devotees here. No. Because if that's what you're thinking, then obviously they're not going to come, and you're not going to try to make them. And you'll be thinking, well, if I make this person devotee, he might have to live in my room. So I better not preach too hard to him. I like my space. No, we can't have this closed mentality. We have to think, let them come. Let them come. We'll make arrangement. Let them come. In Henry Street, 130 devotees in this tiny, anyone pass by? You walk down Henry Street, the number is 439. It's the corner building. It was actually 2 buildings, but one of them is on the corner. Henry is the street that's going east and west, north and south, and Kane is going east and west. So it's Kane and Henry. Nice backyard. Prabhupada would sit out there. Beautiful garden. There's that famous picture of Prabhupada standing, holding, it was either Guru Das's danda or Brahmananda's danda, with a big velour cloth that they rented or had. And so that was taken in the backyard at Henry Street. And then but there was not many. It was built as a private residence back in the day. So there's lots of rooms, but they weren't meant really for, maybe we would have, in one room, we would have 30 people on the floor. It wasn't a room per se. It wasn't where we had lockers. It wasn't my room. I didn't have a room. Besides your school lockers that you kept your personal things in, that's all it was. A couple of senior devotees had a room that was their room, their room, 2 or 3 men together, like that. Like some of the BBT devotees, they had their own room. Agni Dev, Prabhu, Jai Satyananda Prabhu, Gopi Puranadana Prabhu, those devotees, they had their room together like that. The BBT, the press, was called the press. It wasn't even the BBT back then, it was just the press. So historically speaking, we've always been able to survive in close quarters. And that, if we are confident, in ourselves and everything else, then we're not challenged by such seeming, inconveniences. This is, we're sacrificing everything for Krishna and Prabhupada. So what's a few more people in a room? 411 can hold at least 8 people on the floor. Right? What do you think, Narada Muni? Can hold at least 8 people. You just put them like that. Huh? Very simple. Boom, boom. Roll up your... This is where Prabhupada, when in Henry Street, there was always a bucket with water refreshed daily, and a rag. As soon as you got up and rolled up your sleeping bag, you wiped your sleeping spot. Prabhupada said, a Brahmin cleans where he eats and where he sleeps. And that's how we did it. See that? They're implementing the old school, old school. And this cleanliness, as it's commonly said, is next to godliness. So one develops the right attitude for all of his endeavors. If he pays attention to the small things, right? Probably, of course, we hear these things, and we heard him then, and said that when the devotee asked what is the success? How do I become successful in spiritual life? How do I become sincere? And Prabhupada said, by following all the little rules and regulations, because it shows your sincerity. You follow all the little rules and regulations. I mean, he even said it in a mood that you understood that, yes, there's lots of things. But the way the devotee was asking, of course, he wasn't expecting that answer. Follow all the little rules and regulations. But that translates into what? Attention to detail. Isn't that what, the employer, the boss, is looking for? Is that, does this person pay attention to detail? Is he a detail-oriented person? There's all these buzzwords. Is he a detail-oriented person? Does he pay attention to detail? That's what they're looking for. So Prabhupada is giving us the best possible advice for spiritual life, even in a business format that anyone could understand. Yeah? Pay attention to the details. Follow all the little rules and regulations. And then you'll always be Krishna conscious. Because you'll be thinking, why am I doing this? Who am I trying to please? Myself? Krishna? Who am I? My family? So we have that reference point. We have to have that. It's not that we become staked to one place and immobile or just going around in a circle. Do you know where the word grihastha comes from? Griha. Griha doesn't necessarily just mean house. There's that the cow is tied to a post in the ground. That's also a griha. And all he can do is circle. And he's either moving a threshing wheel for grinding grain, or a water wheel for lifting water from the Jamuna. In the old days you would still see these things, but nowadays everybody has a diesel pump, polluting the atmosphere. But in the old days, the cow or the bull would just be walking around that stake. And so that's what grihasthas are, essentially. They're tied to that post. And they're doing their service, but they have a limited range of motion. So we're not limited by any of our activities. We're flexible, and we can apply ourselves wherever needed. That's in companies, they'll call it cross-training. One person can do the job of any other person. It's called cross-training, if necessary. In the military, you have to be cross-trained. It's like on a submarine. Every person knows every other person's job. Because if that person, you can't say, well, so-and-so, died suddenly and there's nobody to replace him. You have X number of sailors on that boat. Everybody has to be able to jump in and do the needful. I think somebody else is going to get it already, yes. So that's the situation. We're flexible, we're cross-trained, we're not stuck to a stake where we feel we can't go out of that routine. No, we can serve Prabhupada and Krishna any way they want. We're not. If Krishna wants me to wash pots or clean bathrooms, then fine, this is Krishna's service. What's the problem? It's not that I can't do that, but I'm a Bhakti Shastri teacher. I can't do that. Or I'm a pujari. Das, das, anudas. We have to become, what's that? Free from designations. But what's that verse? Come on, Gopal. What's that verse? Sarva pari vinirmuktam tatparaten rishikeshu rishikena sevanam. Sarva pari. Give up all these upadis, unwanted things. These unwanted things are not your material possessions, they're your mental possessions. You have to get rid of those things which are holding us back from full service. Whatever's holding you back from full service is not your friend. So you have to, whatever misconception, you have to work through it. You have to rise above it, as they say. You have to rise above it. Tada rajastamo bhavo kamalobhadhyasche. So, now it's Sunday, got to do a cleanup. Those who aren't in Bhakti Shastri, Maha cleanup. And as we were talking yesterday in Prasadam Hall, Sang Siddhya Haritoshanam, Atak Pumbir Dvija Sheshta Varnashama Vibhagasaha, Sanustatasya Dharmasya, Sang Siddhya Haritoshanam. We have to satisfy Krishna. That's the final word. It's not that just because one's thinking I'm a Brahmin. If you're a Brahmin and you can't satisfy Krishna, then your caste or order of life is Shrama eva hi kaivalam. Useless waste of time. Useless waste of time. Right, so, any questions? Any comments? Prabhu in the back. Gopikanta Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Prabhuji, I have 3 questions. You are speaking about loving the service we do, and so how to love the service we do, and more, how to develop that love more and more. And the second question is, when we do that service, sometime we'll have that mental block, like the mind rebels against us. If we do at once we do more service or more physical work, mind restrains from doing that service again. And how to overcome that, how to deal with that. And you are also telling about Prabhupada mentioning about thinking big. And when thinking big, it is also said that we should take small steps at a time. So how to balance those both? Like if we think big and we don't achieve that, somehow our mind gets demotivated, or why I'm unable to do this and all. But so for that they say that take small steps, one step at a time. So how to balance these?
Well, with regards to the big steps or little steps, and Prabhupada, gave that answer, said if you have a bunch of $10 problems, but you have a $100 bill, then all your $10 problems are solved. So we certainly have facility. So the society has everything. It's not just a $100 bill, it's a $1 million bill. So if we're thinking small and acting small, then we're not utilizing the facility responsibly to its maximum capacity. So it's not that we should think small or try to take small steps. There's many euphemisms about trying and succeeding. What is that? Anyway, you can pick any number of them. That obviously every success is born out of failure. So if you don't try, then how would you know? Matter of fact, it's another euphemism about managers. If you're not failing, you're not trying. So we have to be doing everything we can. We don't expect 100% success. But yet we continue to persevere because, just like Prabhupada, if he hadn't stayed, if he had gotten back on the next freighter to India because after 6 months he felt, well, nobody's coming, I guess, I'll just call it quits. So this is, we've learned from others' mistakes. This is also that lesson, that first-class intelligence. Yes, we've heard from Prabhupada. So perfect knowledge is already there, right? Now we can see what has been done, what has been tried, and what has failed, and we can, as much as possible avoid those things. But there is still unbroken ground where what things that we're doing, no one has ever done before. And so what should we think? Well, no one's ever done it, so we shouldn't do it. No, we should maximize, and to a certain extent we understand that there's faith involved. One has to be confident. We can see what, based on, Lord Chaitanya created a revolution, through civil disobedience. It was unheard of. We're simply following in his footsteps. This is our civil disobedience. We're not following the rules and regulations of the material world. We're completely separate. How many people, if you walked up to me saying, meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, and gambling, which one don't you do? So we're giving people a unique opportunity, and we should be very confident about whatever presentation we make in this regard, based on our own experience. That's why it's pratyaksha vagamam dhamyam. It's the perfection of religion because it's practically realized. I don't have to imagine something to try to convince a person. You've already experienced it. You can explain to them, yes. Whatever it is, whatever you think is holding you down in spiritual life can be eliminated simply by the chanting of the holy names. We know this. It's a fact. It's been practically realized. Depending on where you're coming from, of course, I'm sure most everybody in this room is a pure devotee, or you were pure devotees in your last life. But here, when we're in New York, we weren't pure devotees when we joined Prabhupada. Far from it. So we know how Prabhupada saved us. We know exactly what it was that saved us. And so we can go out and we can explain it to people. The same formula. There's no change. Matter of fact, that's the point. The essence, the expertise of the spiritual master is that he delivers the essence without changing anything, just slightly according to time and circumstance. But the essence is never changed. Otherwise, then it's bogus. It's bogus. So don't worry about little steps like that. You shoot for, Prabhupada said, what did he say? Shoot for the rhinoceros. He even wrote a book about it. Shoot for the rhinoceros. But that was part 2, because I don't remember part 1 again. But, Well, the mental blocks about service. Well, that you'll have to work on, because, it's what it is. It's a mental block. It's not real. It doesn't exist in 3 dimensions. Conditioning is what it is, and that's what we're becoming free from, whatever conditioning. It's sarvapati vinirmuktam. You have to deal with those anarthas by engaging in, any service. You can do it through any of the 9 processes, but I suggest doing it in the one that's most difficult for you, because then you'll experience the greatest success, and you'll understand that, yes, this is how you do it. So get that experience. Whatever you don't want to do, you do. Don't let your mind fool you. And that you can't do this. What is that? Even Prabhupada, basically paraphrase it that impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary. Right? And what is that? In NASA, they had that saying, failure is not an option. Right? That's the famous NASA line from the whatever Apollo something that was. Failure is not an option. So if you realize that, yeah, many times you think, okay, I'm done with this, I can, let me go and retire to Alachua, I don't need this headache anymore. So many people giving me excuses about what they can and can't do, chasing people down to do their service. Who needs it? I'm 72, No, we do what we do for Prabhupada. That's why we do it. We don't do it because I'm looking for comfort or ease. Prabhupada even used that term, ease lover. He said, don't be an ease lover. So that should guide us, Don't look for the easy way out. Don't try to skate your way out of your service. Just, bite the bullet. Do it. It'll be done in us before you know it. And you think, what was I complaining about? That was just my mind. It was just my mind. Bhakta Ryan was next. Okay, one thing though, the caveat, everybody has to engage in a cleanup after this. No excuses. Kitchen cleanup. Well, whatever cleanup, there's other things. There's floors to be mopped, halls to be cleaned. There's 2 boxes out there that I ordered for not to bar file. He wanted those, they need to go upstairs. New cabinets have to be assembled. Yeah, if you want to ask someone, what's the worst thing? It's assembling furniture and toys. Nobody likes to do that. You do it because out of love for your kids or your spouse. Otherwise, it's hellish. Dr. Ryan.
What is the goal of Krishna consciousness? Is it to become peaceful or to become happy? Or is the goal to become extremely sincere, to consider yourself a worthless person, a destitute person, and be in that mood of crying out to the Lord all the time? Because if you are peaceful, if you are peaceful and self-satisfied, how can you be crying out to the Lord in that way that the Shakastakam is telling us that we have to be?
Well, our peace is not something which is artificially contrived. It's not an absence of conditions that create tension. Our peace is knowing that we're properly situated.
Like that state of considering yourself like that is actually proper to situation.
It's all encompassing. Being Krishna conscious involves, being holistically complete. I mean, we don't use that term holistically, but it's used in the material world all the time to say all-encompassing. So everything, mental, spiritual, physical, is there automatically. Even if you don't think, you think, well, I'm sick, how can that be? I'm Krishna conscious. Why did I get a cold? No, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Queen Kunti they were in a war. Their children were slaughtered while they were sleeping, And she's begging Krishna, keep us in distress, because in distress we have you before us. So it's not, peace is not the absence of suffering. It is to the materialist. Because there's always the duality. So where our goal is to go back home, back to Godhead. And the only way to do that is to purify ourselves, our entire being, by engaging in devotional service and all of its aspects. Every single one of those aspects, anything you do in the temple is purifying. Doesn't matter if you bend down and pick up a piece of paper and That's purification. If more people knew that, we'd have a spotless temple. Wouldn't be anything. Be no dust on the floor. You'd see Bhakta Phil looking around, where can I find some dust? The dust of the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas. Let me pick some up and get the mercy. Yes, Narada. What's your name, Prabhu?
Akash.
Akash?
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Akash.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Being bold and not being cocky, like, can you give me more context to it? Because sometimes, like, I'm bold, but people, when they are not able to digest, I feel I'm being cocky, but I'm not being cocky. I'm down to earth person as an individual. So I would like to hear more thoughts like on this one. I also believe like when you have when a person has value to offer, then they have like certain level of power and authority, and that needs to be communicated wisely to the people being surrounded. So
Did I understand that word correctly? Did you say bored?
bold. BOLD. Bold.
Like bold. Well, being bold is a valuable quality in Krishna consciousness if it's used for the right purpose. One should not be bold in the sense of trying to impose his personality on someone. Sometimes you'll see that, hey, that guy is really bold, but they mean it in a negative connotation because he's trying to, be overly impressive or something. But bold means to do something that others are shy to do. Like go open up a temple in Kazakhstan. Okay, that's bold. Or go preach in Iran, where the penalty is death. That's bold. It's not that bold means, there's different degrees of being bold. So we have to be bold to whatever extent we can. But for pushing on Krishna consciousness, there's no limit. Be as bold as you can. But it shouldn't be artificial. It should be based on your Krishna conscious ability. That you can, like we said earlier, you can walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So this is an important. A lot of people are falsely puffed up, thinking that I have good birth, I have this, I have that. But all those things are meaningless if one doesn't know where to apply them, how to utilize them. If you give a child a machine gun, it's a deadly weapon in the hands of someone who has no understanding of how to practically use it. It's not that the gun is bad. It's just an inanimate object. It's just another tool, like a hammer or a screwdriver. But in the hands of someone who's ignorant or incompetent, or evil, then it becomes deadly, for the wrong reason. It's always deadly, but deadly for a wrong reason. So, and talent. If you have talent, don't depend on it to be just like a person is a doctor. You can't think because I'm a doctor, because I'm a PhD or whatever, that's going to give me some advantage for going back to Godhead. We see even in our Guru Varga, there are many who had no material qualifications. And some people say, well, yes, these people were just sentimentalists. But no, we understand from their example that they were on the highest level of realization. But externally, they may have appeared to be just pagal, completely crazy, pagal baba, but they were far from it. But externally, so you have to be able to appreciate a person's internal qualifications as not just their external, especially not their external. And the materialists have a saying for that. They say, don't judge a book by its cover. We've many times seen devotees come who, for one reason or another, superficially didn't present themselves as devotee material. You know, but we don't have a monopoly on understanding what is devotee material. Krishna within the heart, he's the touchstone. He can transform anyone, any living entity. You know, so we should not precondition or predispose or prejudice, you know, ourselves to anything without a clear understanding. You know, and our clear understanding is that everyone is eligible for Krishna consciousness, but we apply it that carefully because we see that some people, you know, have other handicaps that are insurmountable because they've taken too many drugs or they need too many drugs. You know, that becomes untenable. You know, so in that sense, we exercised some discretion. That's there. But we don't try to, like I say, go too much into looking at a person superficially. Just, we can leave it at that. Say that again? We don't have any puggle-bubbers. We had people who, from a material perspective, might have appeared to be that way, who wanted to chant their rounds in a latrine. You know what a latrine is? Yeah. So this is all external person, and he specifically did it so that he wouldn't be bothered by people trying to approach him for some mundane blessings. You know, such a botheration. So yes. So some would act in such a way that people would get the message, leave me alone, unless you're sincere. Any other? Because it's getting late and breakfast and class and cleanup and everything else. All right, so thank you very much for taking the time to hear and question. Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Premanandi. Jai. Jai what? What's Jai? We say Haribol. Overtime question? For you, Narada Muni, I'll take an overtime question. No problem.